As you're there serving today in Northern Ireland, you've had experience, like you said, in Sweden and other parts of Europe, and you're looking out at what's coming out of the United States and the West in general. I'm just always curious to hear people's different perspectives. What is the state of the church of biblical Christianity in Northern Ireland and Ireland, the UK? And also, how do you see it in the West, just as a big picture?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to sort of the decline of Christianity, the UK and Europe more broadly, in terms of at least the cultural influence of Christianity, I actually think there's some positive signs, particularly in America. But the cultural influence of Christianity has really declined, and we're probably about a generation or two ahead of America in that regard in most of Europe, with some exceptions, of which I think Northern Ireland would be one. The state of Christianity and the churches is pretty weak, is the honest answer there. There are good, of course, there's good churches, there's wonderful, faithful believers in all of these places. But the general tone and tenor of the church would be that there is a liberal slide. There's also, I think, because we've culturally moved on a little bit further, there is a real tendency towards what you might describe as pietism, which, nothing wrong with being pious, obviously, but pietism would be withdrawing from the culture and saying we're not going to engage in that way. We're not going to engage with the culture as a way of, I think there's some good fundamental motives behind that. Sometimes people are trying to win people to the faith, and therefore I think incorrectly think that we shouldn't engage in those areas. I think we very much should. But so I think the church has in many ways liberalized a lot of them. And others have retreated where they're still fundamentally faithful. If you go and you dig about what they believe, they'll say, yeah, they're sound and biblical, but not active in trying to bring that to bear or in any way trying to disciple the nation around them. So, and numerically then the church is broadly speaking much smaller per capita than America as well. So there are fewer Christians, slightly more liberal Christianity, and broadly retreating would be a quick summary. I think in the West, so if we include America then, what I am seeing now is that I think over the last couple of years, there has been, and I think COVID was part of this, and probably other things as well, the sort of extreme elements of, say, transgenderism and that gender ideology really pushing to an extreme way. I think Christians have started to wake up a little bit. I particularly do see that in America. I think that's why we tune into you guys a lot. But even here in the UK, there are some great figures out there who are speaking into these issues and taking them seriously. And there is a desire, I think, often more from in the pews than from the pulpits, for Christians to speak out on this. And when people start to, for instance, when I preach, if I never get better feedback than when we talk about some of these cultural issues. It's very interesting. You would think those would be the ones that people shy away from, but people actually are hungry for truth in that. And I think some leaders are starting to wake up to that reality. So broadly, there's lots of challenges, but a couple of good signs that things might be starting to turn and might be starting to change.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people are waking up and have wakened up to the problems around them. And I suspect one of the reasons you get better engagement when these topics come up is they're on point. This is where the flocks are being harassed, and they're trying to make sense of that. And they're trying to also respond to that. And that's one of the purposes of conversations like this, is so that we can give sincere believers, and even those who might just be kicking the tires of Christianity, but trying to gauge the faith. But we want to equip them to better understand their circumstances. That's going to allow them to respond biblically rather than just react. And especially if anybody's been blindsided before, it's easy to react, and you don't always do so in a way that you look back and are proud of. But by having conversations like this and thinking through this a little bit more thoroughly, such as what you did on your examination of cultural Christianity, I just think there's nuggets of gold in there for Christians around the world to take away and just really process.